friends, this is it. You found the Dreamers Live podcast. This is our maiden voyage, episode 001. We're so thrilled you're here. My name is Jay Webster. I will be joined by my co-host and co-conspirator here in just a second, Ann Jeanette, who is also my wife. And we're both thrilled that you're here. All you need to know about the Dreamers Live podcast is that by listening to it, it might just change your life. It probably won't, but it might. It will hopefully be entertaining and maybe thought-provoking. And when we're all done, hopefully we walk away being better humans. And that's probably worth the risk in itself. So this first episode is entitled Use Your Words. It probably could have been learning how to cuss, but we didn't go that direction. You can listen to it, of course, here. And if you are really, really bored, you can find us on YouTube. Our channel is at Dreamers Live Now, at Dreamers Live Now. And that's another place you can find this podcast. But between now and then, let's hear this podcast. It's already in progress, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thanks, friends. For those who don't know, we do an event or a community thing.
It's a
called
thing.
Dreamers Live, and we get together with other humans a couple times every couple of weeks, I guess. And it's been very, very cool. We've been doing it for about 2 or 3 years now, and the people that we get together with are very eclectic, and we talk about stuff and kind of formed a community out of all that. And we've been able to go to different cities and stuff to do that, but there are a lot of people who can't get to a Dreamers Live event, and so there's been an outcry.
Well, it was a pretty large outcry from our vast followers.
There's been petitioning, there's been all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And based on the latest request from the president, we've decided, yes, we will in fact do a podcast that kind of crosses over with some of the stuff that we do for Dreamers Live. So
yeah, I mean, just to make sure that this is what I signed on for, we're thinking that this could be another way to get some of the topics that we discuss and the fun that we have at Dreamers Live out to more people that aren't necessarily in our area. And also, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but we're also married and we work together.
Yeah.
So this could be the only conversation that we have this week.
Speaking of being married, we should let the audience know that we have one child.
We do.
What is her name?
She is one child. She feels like 3 children. She's a lot. Her name is Evangeline.
How old is Evangeline?
Evangeline is 12. And for those of you who don't have a child or have had them in the past, middle school is a special time for girls.
It's full contact parenting right now.
It is.
Yeah.
So if we get a chance to actually talk with each other when we're not at work or having a deep conversation with a 12-year-old, it's good times.
Yeah. How would you describe for the listening audience what our daughter Evangeline is like?
Okay. She is a lot. She is super great.
Yeah.
Like you said, full contact parenting.
A lot in a great way, you mean?
Well, okay, you know the scene, was it Spinal Tap, right? This is how we used to define her.
Right.
Yeah, like the amplifier, so the rock band's there, and they're like, the amplifier only goes to 10. And they say, what do we turn it up to? And they're like, an 11.
Yeah.
And so we've always joked that she is an 11, except for now she's 12. And so she's a 12. She's creative and she's funny. She has a subtle, strong will. It's not so subtle at home.
Right.
But we know that strong-willed kids make good adults. That's what our parents told us. It's obviously working out. So, so she's fun. How would you describe her?
Well, she's...
Is she going to hear this?
I don't know.
Okay.
I doubt it. She hasn't listened to anything else we've done. So, I like to think that she is like 1/3 you and 1/3 me, and the other third is just complete alien.
She is
like
an
just
alien.
Stuff that you think, I don't know where that came from, but that's all you. And so I remember that when we were pregnant with her.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. So you were also pregnant with her?
Of course.
That is interesting.
I think the thing that concerned me the most was the part of her that was going to be like me. I know you, I know your talents and all that stuff, so I was okay with that part of it.
That's nice.
But I was most concerned with anything she would pick up from me. And so to see her have all these things that I think are just her.
Yeah.
Like you can't find them anywhere else in the family line.
Yeah.
That part's pretty amazing to me. I think that part's really cool. But it is a lot, man. And she's, for those who don't know her, she is really creative, very talented. She's always been hands-on. She's not a big toy person. She's a
Right.
big find stuff and build stuff. And so,
Yes,
you
she
know,
likes to make things, which
all the time.
for the moms out there is code word for really messy. There's
Yeah.
craft supplies and
Oh my
going
gosh.
from each room to, every room to every room and then outside and always trying new things. She's actually in that way a lot like you. It can be exhausting to
It is
follow
exhausting.
behind.
And she's whatever it is she's doing is super big.
Yeah.
So
Big deal.
even when she was like 5 or 6, she would decide with the neighborhood kids
Mm-hmm.
that they were going to do a rock show, a rock concert for the whole neighborhood.
Yes.
And she would spend an entire day making posters, promoting the event, setting up the stage area and the mics.
And a snack table.
And all of that.
Right.
The one thing she would not really do is pick out songs and play them.
Yeah, the content, the content of the concert
Yeah.
never happened. That's
Right.
right. And as a musician, I was like, hey,
That's
so
kinda-
are you thinking about what you might perform? Do you want?
Yeah.
No, Mom, no, I know it's going to work out fine.
Yeah.
So she basically just likes to set things up.
Right.
And I'm thinking as she gets older, some of the content hopefully will come into play.
One of the things, so in the third of her personality or skill set that she got from you, she actually has this really great ear for music and really has for a long time. And like I can remember probably maybe even when she was 7 or 8, she had picked up hearing Tom Petty sing Free Falling.
Yeah.
And she just went to the piano and just kind of figured out a way
Yeah.
to peck that out until she heard it all the way it was supposed to be, the way it had been recorded.
Yeah.
And so there she was,
Yeah.
at 8, playing through that song without music sheets and just
Yeah.
because she'd heard it that way.
Playing by ear.
Yeah.
She comes from a long line of people who can fake it.
Yeah. When we, when you have kids, there's about 1,000 different decisions you have to make. And one of the decisions we landed on eventually was to try and raise her kind of like a little mini adult.
Yes. That's
And
true.
so we've always introduced her to cool music. When she was still in the womb, I put headphones on your tummy and we played
Yeah.
U2 and we
Yes.
played Van Morrison and we played The Cure and we played all of our favorite music for her.
That's
and
true.
So,
And quick pause for our listening audience, which is probably just like my grandmother and maybe your mom.
Yeah, maybe,
This is not a parenting podcast.
No.
We're going somewhere with this. We're going to
No,
be talking
it's not
today
parenting.
about something, but our daughter happens to be a good analogy for this topic. Please continue, sir.
well, it is funny, speaking of parenting podcasts, that anybody who has been a kid or had a kid somehow thinks they are a genius.
Why?
I don't know.
I know, whatever I did's great. Oh, your kids are in jail. I know.
Your kids are in prison. Don't give me the lecture on what you should do. So we're not lecturing anybody on how to
No,
raise a kid.
it's hard.
But what is interesting is we've always introduced her to real music. We didn't
Yeah.
do a lot of kid CDs
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff.
She could see right through the ABC
Yeah.
songs.
So very early on, we introduced her to music that
Mm-hmm.
was still age appropriate. We weren't
Yeah.
doing anything gross or anything with the music. But
Well, there
she
was
got a
the
hold of it.
AC/DC.
Yeah,
but-
she loves AC/DC now. And so anyway, she has always had this really great eclectic taste
Yeah.
in music. And so she loves Led Zeppelin. That's her current favorite band. She
Yes.
loves 21 Pilots. She loves stuff that's on pop. But then she loves stuff from the 60s and 70s because when you're only 8, 9, 10 years old, all music is older than you. So
Yeah, it's all
the
new to
same
you.
for-
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, what are you listening to? Led Zeppelin. Oh, cool. What are they like?
Yeah, yeah, and she's really gotten a hold of it, and she likes stuff that has an edge to it.
Yeah.
And so when we come across something that we think is cool, we hear something that, on the radio or on Saturday Night Live or whatever.
Yeah.
We're always quick to kind of introduce her to that music, because we want the points with her.
Well, you've got to try to be cool.
Yeah.
Like, especially now, the whole middle school thing, the pressure's there.
Yeah.
Well, we were so cool. We were doing so well
Yeah.
until this year. And then we've just apparently, we're not as cool as we used to be.
We've fallen off the flat earth.
I mean, I
so
feel like
far.
you're the same.
So we came across this song on Saturday Night Live. It was Olivia Rodrigo.
Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she was performing as their musical guest.
Yeah, and it was so great because
gosh.
unlike, a lot of the bands they have where there's like a big set and a lot of lights and dancers, and that's totally fine. It was just her on a piano, this,
Right.
Singer-songwriter singing this haunting song. So good.
So I think the name of the song is Vampires.
It is.
And so
I know because we've heard it about 9,000 times.
So we immediately got the next day, fast forwarded through the sketches, which were completely inappropriate for her.
Right.
And got right to the music piece and played that for her.
Because we wanted her to see.
Yeah.
And also another thing about Olivia Rodrigo that was really cool during this performance is that she was not wearing a leotard.
She was fully clothed.
She was clothed.
That was a big plus.
And yet her music was good. Sorry.
Right.
Side note.
So anyway, eventually, not in our presence because she couldn't admit that we had found cool music, but later I heard her kind of pecking through that song, and because she has such a good ear, which she inherited from you, she was able to get that song down, and so she downloaded all the lyrics and did all that stuff. And I just had to tell you, it's, to hear a 12-year-old rock through a devastating breakup song for 72 hours straight is a lot emotionally.
Yes, it is. Well, and the hardwood floors in our our house was built in 1939, and it's beautiful, but you can hear everything.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
no escaping that song.
Yeah, it was everywhere, and so
It's in all
you
of
just
our
have
souls.
to get there emotionally every time, and you start over again like, oh my God, I can't break up with this person anymore. I'm good. We're all good here. But we ended up in the same room, and she was once again playing through the song, and she got to the end of the song, and she sang the lyrics, and the lyrics at the end of the song were very adultish.
Yes, we did not know that.
Yeah, and somehow in the other 72 hours of her playing it, I didn't quite catch those lyrics. And so that, as the lyrics were intended, they were very provocative, and they had some sting to them and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking about how we should move forward with that. And so I just told her, I said, honey, I don't think your mom and I are comfortable with you singing those lyrics.
Right.
And maybe you want to find the radio-friendly version of that song.
Yeah, that's good. Put it. We're like, these are really good lyrics. This is very poetic. Like, I love the metaphors, and all this is good, but you can't say that.
No.
You
To which
can't do that
she,
right now.
of course, responded, I know. I was just getting ready to do that. I'm like, okay.
Okay, you were not. I know.
It just took you 72 hours to figure that out. I mean, come on.
Apparently, if you're 12, like,
You know a
seriously
lot.
everything.
You know a
You
lot.
know everything. So she already knew what you were going to say before you came in.
Yeah. But I thought that's not really fair to her to just leave it at that, that, hey, I just don't want you to say those words. I felt like she needed to have some understanding as to why we weren't comfortable with that. And the best I could kind of come up with is that it's not about, I'm not a big fan of banning words.
Right.
Of saying this is off limits or that's off limits.
Except for maybe the phrase, I know.
I know. I
Let's
would
ban
ban
that.
that. Yeah. I'd burn that down now.
Burn it. Good.
But no, I wanted to say that, those lyrics for that song and in that context might be completely right.
Right.
But in a lot of ways, you have to earn the right to sing those words. You have to
Yeah.
earn that by living a little bit of life,
Yeah.
understanding what those words mean and why they're important in that context. And at 12, she hadn't really earned
Right.
the right and the understanding to use those words yet.
There was the 5th grade breakup of the non-relationship with that one boy. They did trade
Right.
Valentines,
Right.
and then there was a little bit of a breakup around May.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite the level of the vampire song.
Since they actually never went anywhere together, just saw each other at lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she and I talked about it a little bit, and it opened up this conversation, which I thought was interesting. And it's a secret side note, when you have a kid, the first thing they tell you is, "Oh my gosh, it goes so fast! It goes so fast," and it does. But
it also can go kind of slow.
at certain days are much slower. But I always really looked forward to Evangeline being at this age because these are the conversations I wanted to have with somebody, and that was with us. And so I've always secretly looked forward to her being where she is now. And so we had this conversation, and I said, when we use those words, it's like there is the impact of those words on the person who's hearing them. That means something to them. There's what we are implying there and what the response that we're hoping for, and also what we're trying to communicate. And then there's this kind of thing of what it reveals about us, and so it got in this whole conversation about the power of words. I mean, you grew up in a cocoon. I mean, what were your parents like about adult words?
Adult words.
Stuff like that?
Yeah, well, for people who don't know us, we grew up in Oklahoma, so that's sort of the land.
Your family did, yes.
Yes, my family did. We lived in New Mexico till I was 12. My parents are from Tulsa. We spent some years in New Mexico. We came back here about the time I was Evangeline's age, and we did live in a bit of a cocoon. It was kind of we were kind of raised in the evangelical circle denomination kind of situation. Although my parents were always cool, they allowed us to think for ourselves. They wanted us to own our own beliefs. So there wasn't a ton of pressure, but there was a lot of exterior pressure, I would say, from other people. So it's sort of like my parents were like, we're cooler than this. We understand God's bigger than all of this.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of pressure from the outside. And so, I mean, especially, moms get the brunt of it a lot of times.
Yeah.
They get the judgment.
Yeah.
And so, when we try to float words out, that was it. It was sort of like, we're not going to cuss. We're not going to listen to this kind of stuff.
So your mom was
restrictive.
Your mom was of the train of saying things like, we don't say the word sucks. Is that right? Yeah.
Hey, that is a big deal. You cannot say the word sucks. And then she would, unfortunately, proceed to tell us what that really meant. We were like, Mom, ew. But the point is, we were really taught, especially early on, to be very guarded about what we said. And as a parent now, I understand the external pressure of that. So
we had a very schizophrenic relationship with language in my house because
you guys are good cussers.
My mom was not for cussing. And I ate plenty.
She still isn't.
I ate plenty of soap coming up, but my dad.
Did you really eat soap?
Oh man,
you did.
Oof, yeah.
Irish Spring, just like another flavor.
It was just like Christmas Story. I mean, just eating bars of soap, and it would get stuck in your teeth.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, it was rough.
That's so sad.
And then, on the other hand, my dad was inventing cussing. He would put phrases together that you just thought, "Wow, you are the Steinbeck of cussing. That is amazing."
That is a very creative way to use that. Thank you, Dad, for this knowledge. I'm sure your mom was thrilled.
Yeah, we grew up, and then once you hit the playground, that's all you do.
Oh,
you
it's
just
so fun.
Find ways to cuss and what that means. But so in this conversation with Evangeline, as we were talking about it, I said, I think the thing that's interesting about words are their power, and not so much just the power of the person you're speaking to. Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously there are times when we're using hard words, hard language to get someone's attention,
right?
To pierce something, to pierce their awareness, or and sometimes just because we want to hurt them, because we're trying to cut through something,
and punctuate a point.
Yes, and then sometimes there are words that are like a release valve. I can't stub my toe and just say "dang."
You can't.
I need to have I need more of a release there.
Yes.
But then there's also what those words end up, I think, doing to us. So when I had this conversation with Evangeline, I was saying to her that sometimes when I'm not in a good place, when I'm not being my quote best self, my language tends to reflect that. And the repeated use of hard words and hard language somehow begins to harden my heart. It ends up hardening me inside. It reinforces the hardness that's already there.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting cycle that we have. So yes, we are speaking words out, but they're reflective of what's in, and in our own hearing of our own words, it is reinforcing hardness.
I totally. It's funny because I was on my way here this morning and picking up some sugar-free Red Bulls.
Yeah, you were.
Because the only thing that rivals Oklahoma's low cost of living is the spring, summer, fall allergies.
Yeah,
I mean, this time every year we're like, let's move.
If you look up an allergy map, there's just a giant X over Oklahoma.
So bad, and I do love our state. So much upside. I said all that to say sugar-free Red Bull is about the only thing that'll cure it for us.
Right.
So I was getting the sugar-free Red Bulls at the Jack's on Q, for those of you who grew up here. And some guys were doing some construction outside of there, and I wasn't even really thinking about what we were going to chat about today here. And they were just going to town with the cussing, which it's fine. I mean, honestly, I love a good F word. I find it very versatile.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A well-placed F word. Subject, predicate, verb, adverb. You can use it in any way. So at the right time. But it was just F this, F that. And they were so angry. And I wasn't even listening to them. But it was just in the 10 seconds it took me to pass from the door, past them and all of the anger and vitriol that was coming out from that. I felt like I had the flu and I got in, and I was like, wow. I was like, that's a reflection I'm given. I'm sure they were having a rough day and it's all good, but it affected me just in passing by it.
Yes.
It was interesting.
Yeah. So those words have a way in, like we say, they have a sting to them. They're supposed to be provocative, and when we were coming up with music and some songs would have adult language into it. I mean, obviously that was a draw for us because, but it was provocative and it's supposed to have that sting and weight to it. And I don't think, again, I'm not for banning words and sometimes those are exactly the right words to use in a situation or scenario, but it's the prolonged, repeated use of something like that I think begins to come back on us, begins to come back into us, into our own hearts, let alone the people that we're saying it to, and those words end up having an impact on those people that are hearing it, and it has an impact on the people who are saying it somehow.
Yeah. What are when you think about, aside from just what we call like cussing or slurring or whatever, what other type of words have you found when you find yourself the power of words being negative? I mean,
well, I think that's the key, and it's negative. So words that continue to reinforce a negative view, either of ourselves or of our lives, of our circumstances or situation. Yeah. So it's not saying we have to be Pollyanna about something and all that, but when complaining is such a significant part of our daily dialogue, then we are building that world for ourselves. Yeah. Some way that we're coloring that stuff. That is the vantage point that we're using to see the stuff around us. Yeah. And until we make a decision to pull out of that cloud sometimes and see the good around us. Right. I mean, the people that we like being around are the people who are complementary. Yeah. The people that we like being around are the people who see the beauty in stuff, see the beauty in the things around us, see the beauty in people. We at the Dreamers Lives event, we talk a lot about seeing the good in someone and then actually saying it to them, speaking it to them, because we know that at some level that's going to lighten up their heart. It's going to change the way they see themselves.
Yeah. I'm always amazed just how, and believe me, just like anybody, my mouth can go negative and complaining for sure. But when I'm having a good day and, I see somebody, just the slightest encouragement can change so much in their day. Even something as simple as, hey, I like your shirt. Or I was substitute teaching last week at our daughter's school. I do just a little bit of that to kind of stay in touch with what's going on. And I would try to say something positive. It's kind of a game. You get a little bored in there too, to positive to each kid. Hey, I like your notebook. Appreciate you paying attention. Or, I like the way you threw the gum at your neighbor. It really stuck very well in his hair. Yeah, right. But when I'm on my game in a good way, not only does that encourage them and just lift their spirits a little bit, it lifts mine. Yeah. It's sort of like this vicarious thing. And I will have days where I'm throwing those out in a good way, and I'm so lifted by just doing that. It's the opposite of what happens on a day where, my mouth has the best of me.
Like your description of hearing the guys talking at the on-cue at the convenience store, where you walk away feeling like you have the flu. Yeah. When we speak those things that have some beauty to them, which have some hope to them, which bring some encouragement, in the same way that it impacts that person that you're speaking to, and they feel better about themselves, they feel more light, they feel more hopeful. In the same way, us speaking those words out of our own mouths, somehow that happens for us too, as it's like a contact high. We're giving that to somebody else, but we are benefiting by saying those, by recognizing the good in someone, by recognizing the beauty in someone, by acknowledging the good in a situation or scenario. Yeah. We are benefiting from that, even though we're speaking it to somebody else.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking about, it's easier to do that with kids, even like junior high kids. Why is it, do you think, that it's so awkward sometimes to see it and say it with adults? Yeah. Is there something?
Well, there's a good chance. I think we have a fear. I think we have a fear of looking goofy.
Like, this is going to be weird.
Right. Absolutely. And it is. I mean, there's a lot of times
it's weird at first
when we, compliment someone, catch them off guard. We don't know what situation they've been in. We don't know if they want to hear from somebody else or whatever. And so it can be awkward. But the reality is they do walk away thinking about that. Yeah. And whether they're able to acknowledge it in that moment or not, they're going to walk away thinking, oh, someone someone liked my appearance, someone liked my haircut, someone
Yeah.
liked my style, somebody recognized the good I did in helping somebody else.
Either that or
Yeah.
they want to date me, which is weird because I'm married.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's good too. As we say, as long as they have money, I mean, then I get paid.
That's
So,
right. That is our agreement, right?
Right.
We've decided if one of us goes early.
Date up if you're gonna.
Yeah.
Date up if you're gonna.
I
do
just
it.
feel like that would just be helpful.
Yeah.
The whole situation.
Yeah, but it is. I think the value of seeing the good in someone else and saying that. I have noticed that, especially people who are in the service industry, which, man, that's tough. And
Is that
and most
like-
of us.
When you serve like restaurants,
Yeah,
how would
right.
you just find that?
People that work in-
Bartenders.
Yeah, or you work in a grocery
hospitality.
store and you're,
Okay.
the checkout or whatever.
Yeah.
And I see them go through abuse.
Right.
Or I see them go out of their way to help somebody. It's really fantastic in that moment to acknowledge and say, hey, that was really kind of you
Yeah.
to handle that. Or you were really gracious in the way that you
Yeah.
handled that or endured that or suffered through that, but you didn't lose your cool. And watching that register for them is really important.
I was at the grocery store the other day, as I'm wont to do,
Yeah,
at the Aldi's, as we say.
Once a week.
That's right. Because we keep eating the groceries,
I
so I
guess
have
so.
to keep going back.
Right.
But anyway, there was this one checker lady, and she was all of the people that work there are friendly.
Right.
But she was just like, oh, thank you so much. Well, how can I help you? Oh, how are you doing today?
Yeah.
Good. I mean, she was like the nicest person I'd
Yeah.
ever met, made me look very calm.
Yeah.
And she was so sweet and positive. And so as I was leaving, we chatted a little bit, and I kind of just went back to her and I said, I just want you to know that your kindness and your positive attitude really brightens up the place. And it was, in a weird way, hard for me to say that to her because she was so
Yeah.
effusive and sweet. And she was really touched by that.
Yeah.
And the thing that was interesting about it was I think a lot of times people who are like that don't get the good back from people. They don't
Yes.
hear it.
Right.
And so she's just probably being herself.
Right.
But to say that really makes a difference. And it did. It lit up the whole place.
And as people who are in creative industries, as we are,
Is that what we are? Okay.
we've talked about this a lot, that you go through and you make such efforts
Yeah.
to in your craft to put the right words together, to put the right music together, to put the right images together, to do stuff that connects with an audience and all that. And if someone believes that you are talented in some ways, a lot of times they will not say
I know.
that great job on that, or you did a great job, or they just somehow believe that you already know.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you already know that you're, a good writer. Or you already know that that's a good song.
Or that you're a good parent, or that you're
Yeah.
a good whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
we don't
most
know,
people-
so you should tell us.
most humans do need a certain amount of that.
Yeah,
And
just
even
affirmation.
if you do get something in return, if you're great in the garden, you can see the flowers, you know they look good, but man, for somebody else to recognize that it goes way beyond.
Yeah.
And so in this conversation with Evangeline over the words thing and talking about that, I came to this personal realization of looking at myself that a lot of times if I choose to soften my words, I'm making a conscious choice. This is not how I feel.
Right.
But I'm not going to necessarily talk from the hardness that I feel inside. I'm going to intentionally soften this. I'm going to intentionally say things that have some light in them, or that are brighter, or that are more hopeful. I'm not doing that because I'm faking it.
Right.
I'm doing that because I'm making a choice in that moment to guard my heart from the hardness that comes from the prolonged, repeated use of this stuff. It's the same thing for food. It's the same thing for alcohol. There's nothing wrong with food, and there's nothing wrong with alcohol, and there's nothing wrong with coffee and caffeine and all that stuff.
Sure.
But a prolonged, abusive relationship with that will take a toll on us. If I drink coffee all day, well, that's going to deplete me in a lot of ways and dehydrate me and do all kinds of havoc on my body.
Yeah.
Same thing with beer and alcohol, same thing with certain foods and all that stuff. So I make the decision in my own life, I'm going to use this stuff as it's intended to be used. I'm not denying certain foods. I'm not denying certain drinks. I'm not denying certain experiences. I'm just going to put them in their place.
Yeah.
And so language to me has a place. And that's why I don't want to do word bans.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to abuse them to the point where they have a devastating impact on me or the people around me.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. What do you think about, we hear so much about the word gratitude, like, you know, those words that come up in pop culture where
Yes.
you're like, oh, don't say it again.
Yeah.
And that's a popular one. But the truth is, I do think that sometimes replacing the negative thoughts that we're having, instead of saying those out,
Right.
looking for ways to focus on the positive and to say those things out. I mean, how do you find gratitude affect you on a daily basis if you
Well,
put your mind to it, I guess?
and we've had this conversation at Dreamers Live events before, but I think that we have a much more significant role in building the world around us than we might acknowledge.
Yeah.
So, you know, we vote every day on what world we want. We go to the store, we're not stocking the shelves ourselves, but we are buying things, and what we buy is our vote. I
Yeah.
want these things to be on these shelves when I come back here. Same thing happens with social media and screens and all that stuff. So every time we click on something,
A link. Yeah.
news story or something on social media or whatever, we are voting.
Yeah.
I want my world to include more stories about this.
Don't you hate it when you like click on something, quick side note, and it's like a vitamin, and then you just get like
Oh,
old
my
people
gosh, yeah.
ads for my days? It
Amazon
hurts
one,
my
yeah.
feelings.
Yeah, you click on one thing or you do one search, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden your
Yes,
social media feed is just full of
Yeah.
advertisements for that. Yes, I hate.
And I
do
find
hate
that, like, were you looking for like shoe inserts or something? Because like, I started getting
Are you
like
trying to
Dr.
say I'm
Scholl's.
old?
No,
I'm not old.
all of a sudden I started getting like Dr. Scholl's ads. I was like, hey, I don't even wear men's shoes. Like, what's the deal?
And so I think, you know, in a way, and it is tough because gratitude is, that word is so
Yeah.
kind of overused and
Right.
in so many different ways. But in a lot of ways, we are building
Yeah.
the world we want by what we vote for. And what we vote for is really with our mouths.
Yeah.
So in the case of speaking, we're voting for, I want to see the beauty in the city that I live in.
Yeah.
I want to see the beauty in these people that are around me. I want to see the beauty in the job that I have. That doesn't mean I can't be honest with the things that I wish could change or that I want to change. It's just finding the balance in there of some way of saying, but acknowledging the goodness. If all we're doing is the complaint, if all we're doing is pointing out the bad, if all we're
Right.
doing is pointing out the negative, then that is what our world will be. And if we start to acknowledge the good, it changes the way we see things. It changes the way that other people around us see things. So
Yeah.
that experience of gratitude is really, really powerful,
Yeah.
even if the word itself is a little cheesy and overused.
Yeah. No, it's good. What are some practical ways when you think about, and like we talk about this a lot at Dreamers, different things that being human is hard.
Yes.
And life is really hard. It's also really beautiful. It's a combination. And when we set our mind and our hearts to focus a little bit more on the beauty on a good day, it sure helps us.
Yeah.
What are some practical things that you think of, like if people are trying, you know, if people hear this and it resonates with them, they're like,
Right.
yeah, I need to do this. I mean, I will go through sort of seasons where I'm struggling with negativity
Yeah.
from my mouth, and then I'll, like you said, kind of try to reel myself back in. But
Yeah.
what are some practical things that you feel like people can do or that you might do? I mean, I'm not saying you have a list. Do you have a
Yeah,
list?
I don't have
No.
a list. No.
We should have had a list before we started the
Should have done the
podcast.
top 5 patented
Is
ways
this what
to
people
improve
with the
your
real
life.
podcast do?
I think so. Yeah, I think
They
you
have
do
lists?
You do a patented, guaranteed list of ways to change your life and make yourself more successful.
And then if you listen to the podcast, even if you don't do anything with it, you're going to be better.
I think so. Well, and I think the main thing is that you tease it at the beginning.
Oh.
You tease it about a third way through, and then towards the end, you start parceling out, and then you make them come back for other.
What if
episodes.
we sold some supplements
I
also?
think that might work.
Yeah.
I
Some
do
snake
think,
oil
you know,
things.
I think being around people that you can trust, I think that's a helpful thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this idea of kind of doing, I can only say kind of what works for me. I don't have a strategy for everybody or the rest of the world.
Right.
For me, it helps to, on some basis, usually a daily basis, to kind of take stock of where I am. So in the morning when I have coffee, I might read some stuff, I might meditate, I might think about that. But my goal is to reset my heart for the day, to reset my mind for the day, to reset my being for the day.
Okay.
And in that, if I can get quiet, I can often see, oh yeah, if I think about yesterday, I spent a lot of time bitching about things. I spent a lot speaking of words, I spent a lot of
Yes.
time complaining
Good word.
about things. I spent a lot of time, and I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
And I think having a spiritual connection like that gives you a little bit of insight in that too.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big factor, regardless of your orientation or where you come from, things like practices, things like ancient scriptures and all that stuff, all those things ring true because they've been around for generations after generation after generation. And what we found is that humanity doesn't really change that much.
Yeah.
So what was true about the human condition 2,000 years ago is, fortunately or unfortunately, still true now. So those kinds of things still add to us in that process. So that's one thing. And then I think the idea that
So surrounding yourself with people you think is...
being with people is an incredibly helpful thing.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
As opposed to just being alone and solitary.
Yeah.
But in those moments of quiet, I think that's a big deal. To center in yourself, to consider where you are, to take stock of what your mind and heart are like. But then this thing of community where you're with other people is so significant because there are thoughts that stay in our brains until we're with other people. And the reality is that when we're with more people, we have less time to complain and be grouse and do that stuff. Yeah. And then the other part of it, I think, is that joy, happiness, acknowledging good, those things are contagious. So when you're with someone, I'm thinking about our friend Philip, who is the most bubbly personality you've ever met.
He is so cute. We saw him last weekend. I mean,
I've never seen this man without a smile on his face. And you can't help but smile when you see him.
I know.
So he comes at you, and you're thinking, I don't know if I'm feeling this or not. But
like,
then
what are you so freaking happy about, Philip?
But then by the time he gives you a bear hug and he smiles, you got to do it. You've got to respond with a smile, and it changes you. And so we have that opportunity to do that for other people when we acknowledge the good that's in them and the good that we see in them, and all that kind of stuff.
One quick thing I was thinking about too, before we do we close down? Is that
we
what
close out? This is us
did
closing.
We plan? We didn't even really plan this. This is the outro. I was just thinking about, we talk about the power of words around other people, but I know one of the things that I struggle with for me, so we all have this inner dialogue or inner monologue. Did you know, did I tell you this? I was listening to...
Is this for everybody or just for me?
Either way.
Okay.
I was listening to NPR, and apparently there's like a really small cross-section of people that do not have an inner monologue, an inner dialogue.
How do they survive?
I don't know.
How do they know what to say?
But also, I was like, I would like that. I mean, like, don't all of us have thoughts running through our mind all the time, right? Except for the small percentage of people. So they did some study on it.
How do they know they don't have an inner dialogue?
Well, I know, right? Because when you have to talk with
because
yourself,
half of my life is deciding on whether or not I'm going to say this out loud or not.
Or whether I'm going to eat something else. Am I going to eat this? Should I stop eating this?
I have this inner monologue, and I'm thinking, that's pretty damn funny. I should say that. And then there's another voice that says, I don't know.
Well, I always
Maybe
know
not.
when you're working on your material. Some of us have to speak everything to think of, but it's in your mind. Yeah. So I think most of us have an inner monologue. And for me, a lot of times, that inner monologue, so the words, they're not coming out, but they're in my mind, can be negative. And particularly... against myself is how I would describe. I remember listening to somebody talk about this, and he would say to himself, whose side are you on? And I thought it was just true, though. And I feel like the older I get, the more I have to wrestle against that and remember to try and be kind and compassionate even toward myself in my own mind. Yeah. I mean, how do you think we can gain a little bit more mastery if that is that sounded neat. Can we gain mastery?
Sometimes I think we do need some outside help. I mean, I think that is the value of community, because hopefully you're with people that recognize the good in you. Yeah. That see your talents, that like you. And so that's important. And hopefully you're giving them something to like. So you're not always being with people and complaining or talking about your problems and all that stuff. But then
we all see those people come in and we're like, oh.
But then I think that's also really a significant value of counselors, so someone who can help rewrite
that script.
Stuff. Yeah,
that's
because
in
it's
your
playing
mind.
in your brain. And sometimes, I'm as, growing up faking my way through being an athlete, body awareness was a real struggle for me. So the coach would say, do this with your arm, and when you're swimming, I was a swimmer, so they'd say, do this, and make sure you don't pull your hand out too early. And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Like,
I don't know where my hand is. I'm just in the water. And so they would have to give me a tell. They would have to give me a thing, something that would bump. So I would actually have to touch my thumb to my thigh on every stroke to make sure that I was getting full extension of my arm.
That's interesting.
Because I didn't have that kind of body awareness that would just know that's happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes with our minds, we need that same kind of thing. You have to set an alarm to go off on your phone and remind yourself of truth. You have to say at lunch, I'm going to take 5 minutes and try and reset my brain back to this positive thing. Or when I go, or you sit in the car for 2 minutes before you walk into a place and you think, okay, I'm going to go in, and I'm going to recognize the good in somebody else, and I'm going to say that. And then when I go in, I'm going to practice listening more than I speak.
Yeah.
And when I go in, I'm going to do these kinds of things. And so
remember-
maybe part of that is like this thing about in the morning where you are trying to reset and you just acknowledge one good thing about yourself in that day, one good thing that you like about you in that moment. And sometimes it's going to be the same thing for a couple of days, but you'll probably find something else as you go on.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I agree. I was thinking about growing up in the arts. So took some acting classes and everything, summer workshops. And one of the things that they would talk about before you went out on stage, if you were going to try to become the character, is that you would give yourself what they called a moment before.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a cool concept, right? Because it is, if you're going to... say you're a teenager or whatever, but you're going to play a scene where you're a mom and the mom's really upset about something. So instead of just going in and being like, you should have cleaned up your room or whatever, you would take a moment before in that character's life and you would realize that she had just gotten yelled at work and that someone rammed her car, and then she was coming in and her kid also was singing Olivia Rodrigo and cussing big cuss words or whatever. But that moment before would set your mind into that character.
Yeah.
And I think something that you and I do, probably because we're perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
I think the podcast proves that, but
obviously. But before if we have to go into a lot of meetings or we're trying to pitch an idea or whatever that is, or a concert, we will usually quiet ourselves and take a moment before to say, what is the purpose of this?
Right.
What good can I bring into that situation? And man, I need some help with that, and set our hearts right. And that moment before, I think, can be a pretty big key.
Right.
I have to take a moment, lots of moments before Evangeline wakes up, because I'm not a morning person.
I was going to say,
set that right,
you've been so good at that.
Oh, thank you.
I think when, and I think we've done that with each other for a little bit. And but on your encouragement, I think we've done that with Evangeline, both together as a couple, but then also individually. So when you get in the heat of whatever's happening in that moment, it's so easy to be really emotional.
Oh yeah.
And to let things, and you're trying to get someone's attention, and you're trying to get something to change.
Yeah.
And so you can use language and body language and words to try and pierce that moment, to try and get somebody's attention. And sometimes that's effective, and sometimes it's really hurtful.
Soul crushing.
And it just takes what could be something that is either A, healing, or B, something that could be contained, and it just blows it up.
Yeah.
And so taking that moment to consider, why are we here? Why is this person responding the way they are? What is actually
causing
happening?
the behavior?
So my friend Richard is a roofer, and so we were just talking about this weekend.
Richard's many things.
He's a lot of things.
He's awesome.
But he's a roofer, and so we were just joking about when you're in the house and there is a drip happening in the house, that where the drip is not necessarily where the leak is, because rain comes in on one part of the roof and it comes down the rafters, and it might come down like 6 or 8 or 12 feet, running down an entire rafter, and then it hits a spot where it can't go any further and it starts to drop. So where it's leaking in your house is not where the leak is. And so that's the same thing, I think, probably with us. Where the moment or explosion is not really where the problem is. The problem is 12 feet back.
Yeah.
The problem is, I had this kind of crappy day over here, or I have this insecurity, or I'm actually scared about this. But where I'm expressing that and where the explosion is happening, that's way down here in the line.
Yeah, that happened this morning, actually, speaking about our daughter. Was pretty interesting. She was, middle school mornings are tough. You don't have very long to get ready. They, they need to sleep, but then anyway, it was pretty crazy, and she was super 12. And you and I were both tired because the night we had last night and the whole thing. And so it kind of started to become a whole deal on the way out the door. We try to never leave upset with each other.
Right.
We always say, I love you. That's like a family rule. You can be like, oh, I love you. Whatever. You don't force it. But the point is just that you want her to know. I would never want to send her out the door without her knowing that she's loved.
Right.
And so she was upset. She went to the car and she came back in and forgot her Chromebook. And I just remember thinking, God, how many mornings like this are we going to have in a row?
Yeah.
And what was interesting was when she came back in, she'd had just enough time before she got to the car. And she said, Mom, I'm really sorry. And she was genuinely contrite and she had tears in her eyes. And because I didn't lose it this morning with my mouth on her and say words, which I did that yesterday. She came back and said, I said, it's okay, babe. She said, I just really wish I could stay here today.
Yeah.
And so the motivation behind the way she was acting mean to us was that she wasn't feeling it for school today.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening. That's where the leak was in her, being fearful or not feeling that, wanting to do that today. She reacted in a different way. And anyway, but I was grateful that today, anyway, that my words stayed, mostly encouraging.
What's hilarious is that she could probably do her own podcast and she could...
Oh, she should...
she could go through all the things that she finds frustrating about us. My parents are such 12s.
They are. They're always trying to teach me stuff. They won't let me sing cuss words.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have made it.
Oh, did we do it?
Well, we're still here, but the audience, we need to let the audience go.
We should
you
let
should
them
let
go.
you guys go.
We should let them go.
You have made it through the maiden voyage of the Dreamers Live podcast, episode 001. Wow, friends, that is a lot for one episode, even for your maiden voyage, your first episode. So thank you for listening and being a part of that. We so appreciate it. We do hope that you'll do all the stuffs, the liking and the subscribing and the forwarding and the sharing and all that jazz, so that we can continue to stay together on this. If you want even more than you got today, which is hard to imagine, you can head over to my website, which is speakingofjwebster.com, all one word, no spaces, speakingofjwebster.com. You'll find an email address there too. If you would like us to maybe come and do a Dreamers Live event in your neighborhood, that's a great way to handle that. Reach out to us that way too. So in the meantime, we hope you'll come back and